Happy New Year and happy first hump day of the year. The change of the year always brings a sense of renewal and a sense of change. The measure of a year is one of our longest measures of time, right? We got the hours, we got the weeks, we got the months, and we got a year. So that's a long time. So from 1 year to 1 year is a very long time, and a lot can happen. And you would expect within yourself for there to have been a difference between your 2022 and your 2023. But there's a lot to unpack with that, right? You got to change yourself. You got to know what to change. You got to know what you want to change, right? And all of that, I feel, is related to the title of this video, which is What is the Soul? You know? And so wanting to change, wanting to generate true change really does, I feel, entail knowledge of yourself, right? Knowledge of your soul, knowledge of your body, knowledge of the network of everything that exists in between your ears and everywhere else, right? And so it's a good point of discussion. I will be trying to answer this through a philosophical lens. Not that I'm well versed. I just minored in university. I minored in philosophy in university. So I'm by no means attuned to the technicalities of the theories of the correct terminology. But I do have an awareness of it, and that's what I'm going to be drawing from mostly. And the first way to try to answer this question, which by the way probably doesn't really have a straight answer, but there's going to be different answers to it, but that's the nature of philosophical questions, in my opinion and my experience. But the first sort of hurdle that I feel that you would have to answer would be, what is the difference between the mind and the body? What is the mind and the body? What is that, right? So the body is what you would say is something that exists in the physical world, right? So anything ranging from your feet and your hands all the way down to the chemical reactions that occur inside your body that enable you to be alive and have a consciousness, right? All the electrical signals running through your brain, running through your heart, all the blood flow that's happening, all the metabolism. Right, so that's what you consider all body, right? Of course, you would be hesitant to say that you're just the product of chemical reactions. That's kind of on the other extreme spectrum of body, right? Of trying to define who you are, is that you're just the product of chemical reactions. You may think you have a say in what you're doing and what your actions are, but ultimately, it's your body just spontaneously reacting, causing these chemical reactions that are translating to your consciousness in thought. There's a lot to unpack there, but mostly I think when you're talking about the body, you're thinking about things that have causal effect, right? That things that are explainable, I would say. So generally speaking, not always, but when you're talking about the body, you're talking about the physical world. Now, when you're talking about the mind, when you're talking about the soul, it veers off into almost a mystical realm, right? Because you come to see that the soul is not really located anatomically anywhere on the body. Is it in your stomach? Is it in your brain? Is it the realization of all the experiences that you have integrated into one conscious mind? Whoa, right? Who knows what the mind is, right? But it's a good practice in self-discovery, and I don't know if you would call it a practice really. But I think that enabled to have knowledge of yourself, the knowledge that will allow you to be able to change the things that you don't like about yourself, you have to know yourself, right? There's this thought experiment way back when it was on the Oprah network or something, of all places. Which, by the way, Oprah gets flack, I think, but I don't know. Maybe she doesn't get flack. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, I saw this thing on the Oprah network, and it was a thought experiment. So we don't have to go through it, but I'll run down how she goes through it. So she tells you to close your eyes, and she tells you to think of a square. Think of a red square. And then she goes through these series of shapes, from what I remember. Think of a green triangle. Think of a yellow circle. Things like that, right? So you're thinking of these things. She tells you to think, close your eyes and think about these things. Ultimately, the interesting conclusion to that was that every time you thought about something, it was from the third person perspective. So you were closing your eyes and you're thinking about these things, and it's you looking at the red square. It's you looking at a green triangle. It's you looking at a yellow circle. And so the interesting conclusion to that is that you are an observer of your own thoughts. Very, very interesting thought. You are an observer of your own thoughts, right? So you ultimately don't have to react to your own thoughts. No, this isn't part of the thought experiment, but I thought of this one. So you close your eyes, and then you think about the happiest moment. You think about your saddest moment. And it's kind of centered around the same concept, except with an emotion, you feel it in your body. Like it's not just you observing a red square. It's also you feeling your chest clench, you feeling your gut go into a knot, crying or cackling or laughing or smiling, anything, right? There's a specific reaction with your body that doesn't exist when you think about a red square. In a thought, you're an observer. In an emotion, you feel it in this, right? And so maybe there's kind of the first clue that we got is that emotions exist in our body, and our thoughts were able to almost be observe. So what does that all even mean, right? And how does that relate to discovery of yourself and ultimately renewal of yourself and the betterment of yourself? Well, I think the self-discovery of yourself, the process of it, is an emotional ride, right? That's motivated by consciously thinking of it. Right, so that's a lot to unpack. But let me repeat that, right? So the path to self-discovery, I feel, is directing your conscious thought to the sensation of your emotions, right? And that's ultimately how you can locate or define what makes you you. Because emotions they are motivated in our experiences and in our memories, right? In terms of things that are traumatic to us and things that make us feel loved and make us feel that this world is worth living in, right? Those are the two opposite sides of the spectrum. Unfortunately, with the nature of negative emotions, once you start to direct your conscious thoughts to the memories that have caused you intense negative emotion, well, you won't want to revisit that because it hurts too much, right? And it could be simple as a breakup with a person. It could be as grave as, a tragic death in the family or something like that, right? And it can be difficult to visit those thoughts that we felt, the whole network of emotions, and trying to understand our own emotions, right? And trying to understand why this happened. You see it a lot in people who have this terminal illness. There are two ways they come out of it. Either they miraculously find peace, or they go the other way and are just balls of anxiety. And both are there's no judgment call on either, right? Both are completely rational ways to approach a situation where you're terminally ill, right? You could be at peace with it and say, oh, well, what other choice do I have? Which is a common... The people who are at peace with the diseases that they have, that's commonly what they say. What choice do I have? If I'm not at peace with this, if I'm not happy about this, if I'm not able to be happy, then all I'm going to be is a ball of sadness my entire life. And I don't want that, right? That's really what these people say, right? It's bizarre, but also so enlightening that, because I make a point to ask people, because, I work at a hospital, and you could just feel the energy from someone who on paper looks really, really sick, but then you see them and they're just cackling, asking for a milk and wants to enjoy their cereal or yogurt or parfait or whatever. Right? And they're going about their life. And it's an interesting thing to realize from these people that for the most part, our life is a choice. Our life is a choice. But to be able to get to choosing how your life turns out, you need to be able to understand who you are, what your situation is, what is under your control, what isn't under your control. And getting to that realization, there are hurdles of the experiences you've had that proves that wrong, right? The experiences you've had, the memories that you had that tells you, hey, you have no say in this life, which is incorrect. But many of us are led down to thinking that way because of what we've experienced in our life. And because it's so painful to revisit those experiences, we tend to avoid them under the guise of, well, I don't really need to think about that right now. But eventually you will, right? Because that's a part of you that you're not acknowledging, that you need to acknowledge. And it's going to be a painful journey for anyone. It's a painful journey for anyone to have to relive the experiences they think is traumatic. And that's going to be relative to anyone, right? For some people, the worst thing that's happened to them is a breakup with someone they dearly loved. For others, it's like witnessing mass murder, right? I mean, I don't know, but those are like, you can get into the habit of scaling events in terms of what you should feel, but that's not the right way to do it, right? If someone feels sad, they're sad. It doesn't matter what motivated it. And then it's up to them to figure out, like, hey, maybe a breakup isn't worthy. Maybe a breakup with that guy isn't, like, or a girl isn't maybe a breakup isn't supposed to make me feel so depressed when there are people out there who have witnessed mass murders, or there are people out there who have been involved in, like, a school shooting, or there are people out there that have lost a child from a school shooting, right? So you go through that, right? But you need to be able to gain perspective, and however you get that is however you get that. That's the journey of life. But yeah, ultimately, the journey of discovering yourself is really related to loving yourself, right? And in learning how to love yourself, once you really learn how to do that, you will your life changes. I don't know how else to put it. Your life changes once you learn how to love yourself. And that's really really important for all of us to understand. Um and there are, because there's a certain way where you can understand, oh, you have to love yourself. The bad spectrum of that is you become selfish, right? You become arrogant, you become too self-involved, which is the incorrect way to do that too, right? To truly love yourself is to be at peace with yourself. If the way you love yourself is that you want to obtain certain experiences, certain objects that you feel will make you at peace, well, that's not the right way to do it, right? Love is not something you obtain. Love is just something you understand. It's the ultimate understanding of anything, right? If you love something, you understand it in a different way. That's why you can love a person and you can love the whole network of a person. Or you could fall in love with music. You can fall in love with guitar. You can fall in love with anything. All it takes is a choice to relentlessly understand it. Right? And so you have to be relentlessly understanding of yourself, of all the cringy moments that you have, of all the mistakes that you've made, of all the irrational choices that have led you down a path of destruction within your own life, however that looks. But I think it's important to understand that to be able to change yourself for the better, you need to love yourself. Because once you love yourself, all of those questions immediately make themselves clear to you, and you immediately generate. And it doesn't all happen it's not like an epiphany moment either. It's a gradual sort of realization of the experiences you've had and how that's affected you in your life, right? Because if you have gone through a traumatic experience, whatever it was, it's very, very difficult to remember all of that all at once, at one time, right? It'll break you down, right? If you've experienced something as grave as losing a child at a mass shooting, well, you're not going to be able to talk about that all at once with someone, maybe to people you love, but even then, you can't even really talk about it to yourself, right? For an example of that for me was working as a registered nurse and having the experience of going through COVID. That's just, you experience it, but while you're experiencing that kind of thing, you're kind of ignoring how you feel because you got to go to work the next day. You can't just revel in the amount of death that you saw. That happens after the fact. That's happening right now in my own psyche, right? But I'm still at peace with it because, well, for one, there's the distance of time from it, so I've had some time to kind of go back and forth, kind of think about what happened in COVID and then go back to my regular life. And then, you get it in bits and pieces, which is why therapy kind of doesn't happen. It happens once a week, an hour session, and then you use that session to kind of motivate your thoughts about it and slowly inch towards an understanding of the situation while minimizing the negative emotional impact you might have towards that. And there are other ways to do it, right? So some people just go straight to the point and are blunt with it and are able to handle anything. But, at some point, you got to recognize the fragility of yourself and take it easy on yourself. And you'll understand how to do it, you will. And so, there's a lot to unpack there. It's difficult to encompass the whole big picture of what is the soul. But I think ultimately, if you're asking the question, what is the soul? It's difficult to define in words because it's so unique to each and every person, right? A person's soul is your soul, it's yours. It's not locatable, it's only definable through your expression of yourself. And the way that you can express yourself to its fullest is to first love yourself. And so it might be a cop out answer, but I think the final answer to the question, what is your soul, is that love yourself and you'll find out. Peace. Happy first hump day.